Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, I think it is now. I'm sorry that there's nothing in the booklet there about the company, so you'll have to pay a little bit of attention to the presentation. I'm very thankful to Manuel and Jacques for allowing us to take up this spot at a very short notice to talk to you about Giyani metals. My name is Robin Birchall, and Eric has done a very nice job introducing me. I have a long history and experience in financing extractive industry, both mining and oil and gas. And I'm going to be presenting to you today Giyani, which is an emerging manganese developer and explorer in Botswana. So the usual forward-looking statements. We're listed on the TSXV. So really, a little bit about the opportunity. It's quite a unique opportunity. Manganese is a slightly esoteric metal, similar in some ways to vanadium, chrome, nickel. Its key primary use has always been in the steel industry for increasing tensile strength. But as a number of you will know, and particularly listening to that previous presentation about lithium, it's very, very important in the battery technology for use as cathode, especially in electric vehicles. So the metal has had a significant uptick in the last 18 months as people have realized that the existing producers of manganese, particularly the very high grade, or what used to be very high grade and large South African deposits, are starting to come to the end of their lives. And the other two key areas of production really are in Australia, which is about 20% of the world market, and in China, which, as you know, is very typical for China. They produce very low grade, or relatively low grade, but large quantities of manganese. So a little bit about us. Really, it's a very large land package that we have in Botswana, with some existing areas that have been mined in the past for manganese, which were either artisanally mined or semi-professionally mined, but quite a long time ago, back in the 60s. So we've picked up quite a large land package. You can see here on the map, this is a very large land package. It's in the bottom corner of Botswana, in the most developed area, very close to the capital, Gaborone, which is a city of about 500,000 people. Botswana is a very well-established mining jurisdiction. It's connected into the Southern African or South African rail network, so that gives us access directly to both Maputo, Richards Bay, and Durban, and if necessary to Saldanha and to Port Elizabeth for shipping of the product. It is relatively a bulk commodity. It's not a huge bulk commodity like coal and iron ore, but you do have to move millions of tons of it. The infrastructure in this corner is probably the most developed of any African nation, maybe barring South Africa. It's a very safe country, Botswana. It's the only country I know in Africa where the police don't carry guns. And you can see where the location of our deposits are. These are right on the rail links and right on the main Trans-Kalahari road network, which is quite important for us in terms of the future development of the company. Moving on a little bit, it's the area is part of the Transvaal supergroup geologically, so it's really just an extension of the trend of the well-known manganese producers in Southern Africa or in South Africa, which are in the sort of Eye of Karuma and Hot as Hell kind of area, which is just south of the Botswana border, about here. So this is an extension of that. Botswana has, most people know, Botswana has always been very well known for its diamond mining, and Jwaneng is not very far away from us, about here. But that really has meant the focus on other metals and minerals hasn't been particularly great. There has been some mining for nickel and nickel oxides in Silibwe Peakwe, which is up here. But that came to an end in the last couple of years. So really it's always been diamonds, and that's why the manganese and the copper and other things have been fairly overlooked in Botswana. Just a little bit about, in particular, our deposits. They are they're fairly early stage in terms of exploration, but they have been actually exploited before. So the quality of the product is reasonably well known. They're fairly high grade. We should be having our presentation, or sorry, our report will be coming out on CEDAR, I think, next week, which will be able to give you some more detailed information about the assay and the quality of the underlying ore. But it is in the top quartile, which is where we want to be. And because of the nature of the deposits, they're not particularly very deep. Most of this will be open pit mining. There will be a little bit of underground mining into the side of some of the deposits. And our main one that we're looking at the moment is in Giyani. This is the actual deposit itself. You can see there was a series of small pits that were operated here, and on the other side there's been a number of adits that were put into the underground underneath the hill. It's a relatively steep-sided hill with pretty good infrastructure, a paved road right there in the vicinity of a town of about 50,000 people. So we have excellent infrastructure there. And you can see the grades here are, from our initial sampling program, are pretty high in terms of MNO. We will be getting, obviously, further analysis for what the DMTU values are, but we would expect them to be at the top end, the sort of 52%. So that's Cahill. The other two really key ones are Otse and Lobatse, both of which are right on the main road, the first road that was built in the country way back in the 60s, and the railway line runs less than a kilometer away from them. So, very well located. And the N4, which is the main corridor that goes all the way down to Maputo, ends right at the border at Lobatse, and that's the main entry point for imports and exports in Botswana. Just a little bit of geological information here. You can see just some of the samples that we've collected and the style of the mineralization, which I can discuss with you afterwards if you want a bit more information on it. And you can see here in K Hill, this is the hill, this is the original pits with the offset fault. We will be looking at mining under the hill and extending the open pit down the hill. But they're mainly manganiferous shales of quite a high quality. In Otse, that's the other key deposit. It's incredibly close to the road. You can see the road is running right here, very, very close. Right here, very close to the deposit, which is maybe 500 or 600 meters off the main road. It's been mined previously as well as a relatively large pit for non-professional or non-industrial mining, which shows, which has the ore zone open. So we've been sampling in the ore zone, and again you can see we have pretty good distribution of grade in the pit, and we'll be developing that further as we go further with our exploration program. A little bit about what we're going to be doing. Some of this is a little bit out of date. We've done the assessment, we've done the understanding, we've started the testing. We started that already this year, so we're a little bit ahead on our process here. We are thinking about what our next steps are in terms of capital, because we keep getting requests from the consumers, particularly the battery flake consumers, to deliver ore to them, and we have to decide whether or not we will go into some initial test production to generate some cash flow, or direct our attention really to expanding and developing the resource base of the company, so that we can go into large scale production in the future. So 2018 will be a pretty busy year. We'll be looking to raise some capital to fund some of these activities in the relatively near future. So if anybody has any interest, I can collect your cards and be able to deliver you the presentation and some of the information that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So really just it's a combination of the timing of the manganese market and the ability to pick up these licenses for us, which drives this opportunity. The price of shippable manganese and DMTU has increased significantly in the last 18 months because people have woken up to the fact that there's a shortage, and that the really serious high-grade producers are coming to the end of their life, and there's going to be a significant increase in demand for cathode manganese for the for the battery industry. And even yesterday in the conference, some of the investors and some of the traders came up to us and said, well, look, we'd like to give you some money, but you need to offtake with us right away. And I said, well, we just need to hold on and see where we go with that. But there's a lot of demand, even for just shipping unprocessed ore, which they'll process themselves. So, I think the opportunity is a very interesting one in terms of the fact that we have a very good land position and we have excellent infrastructure. We can move this opportunity forward pretty quickly if we want to into production. The processing route for the initial stuff is very, very simple. As you can see here, just some primary crushing and screening, and then we just have to separate out the fines and the lump. They sort of trade at different values. Interestingly enough, if you can maintain a high enough grade in your fines, you get a very much higher value for it because it's more useful in the flake production, whereas the lump is really used for steel production. You can see here just a little bit on the industry. I don't want to teach you too much about the industry. I'm sure you can, you'll have heard from the other lithium miners and producers here about the battery industry, and they know the battery industry very well. But our product is very much required in the battery industry, and you can see here that, and these are last year's figures, that there's a significant shortage in the market. That shortage is there this year. That's why the price is rising all the time. It's not an incredibly diverse market. There's a small number of producers, and you're only talking about demand of 47 million tons and consumption of 44 million tons. This is not thermal coal or coking coal or iron ore where it's hundreds of millions of tons, but it is a bulk product. Manganese in batteries. I'll leave this for you guys to read. I can distribute the presentation to you electronically, or you can find it on our website. But it just goes into a little bit of detail on where manganese fits into the battery industry itself. As I've said already, as I've noted, there's a significant increase in demand for these batteries, and we're going to have a very large ramping up in production, or at least we believe so in terms of electric vehicles. You see the industry is developing quite rapidly in the US and China. We've got a little bit of detail, but you can see that Botswana is very dependent on mining. It's one of the richest countries in Africa. It's one of the most stable, fully functioning democracy, and we're just very pleased that we're there. And in particular, compared to what's happening in South Africa with the Department of Mines and the difficulty that people have in operating with black empowerment and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really exist in Botswana. It's a much, much easier jurisdiction, much more like maybe Australia or Canada or something like that. Of course, it comes with the bureaucracy and the organization you have to deal with, but it's fairly straightforward. So just to sum up, really, we think that the grade in the deposits is very critical. That's what drives the value of many manganese developments and producers. And of course, in South Africa, the big guys, they all had very high grades. They're starting to slip a bit. They're coming into the high 40s, down from the low 50s. The scale, we think that there's significant resource base, especially given the very large size of the land position we have. Management team, there'll be some announcements on that, but I think that we have a pretty good management team, and we'll continue to strengthen that as we go forwards. Jurisdiction, I've mentioned that. We're very happy being in Botswana compared with many other African countries. It's just easy to operate in terms of getting equipment and getting in and out of the country and finding places for people to stay and live. And finally, the metallurgy of the product we have is quite conducive to the flake, part of the segment of the market, which is very, very important. I'll just have a quick look here. Yeah, I think I'm in good time.
Yes, you are.
So really that's, there's the investment highlights. If you have any interest or if you want to ask me any more questions about the manganese business or our business in particular. I'd be very happy to answer the questions between now and lunchtime or after the session. And I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity and listening to me today. I think that's basically it. Yeah, I have a little bit of stuff here on the company and our shares and stuff, but that's in the appendix. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
You got time for any questions or not?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I think I've given myself just a little bit of time. If anybody wants to ask anything in particular about the company or more specifically about the industry.
Anybody has a question?
What sort of production are you programming?
Well, the initial production will be pretty small. Maybe we'll be doing something like 50,000 tons per annum, but it's really just trial mining. And then, as we develop the resource, you'd probably be looking at something like 500,000, between 500,000 and 1 million tons, just depending on the direct infrastructure at the different deposits. It's really going to be driven by the ability to go open pit or how much we need to go underground and some of the other factors. One of the deposits is very close to the South African border. I mean, it's literally about 100 meters from the South African border. So there may be some constraints that we have in terms of the infrastructure there, and obviously we can't go across into the South African side. And we may, if we find that the trend continues across in the South African side, we may have to peg the South African side of the border. But yeah, I think initially we'd be looking at about 50,000 tons in terms of trial mining, and that'll generate some good cash flow for us. But later on, we would try and be. I don't think we'll be as big as the big South African producers, which are between 1 million and 2 million tons, but something 500,000 to maybe 750,000 tons.
All right, well, Robin, no, I might have.
You're saying there's a limit. Have you got any kind of definition of the resource?
No, look, that's what we're going to be raising the money for, is to define the resource. It's been mined in the past, so we know that there's a significant amount of artisanal mining that's happened, and that's the real trade-off between, do we just go and start producing 50,000 tons now and generate some cash flow, or do we actually drill out the deposit? And I think I have to stop now.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.